animated into live action. You know, at times it can be good, and at other times, it can be very, very bad. You know, recently the live-action One Piece came out, and it's been getting some pretty good review scores. But for every One Piece, you can also get a really terrible Death Note. These are some of the best, and also some of the worst, animated to live-action TV shows / movies that I think should be revisited. Starting with, oh my god, Garfield 1 and Garfield Tale of Two Kitties. Thank the Lord. Listen, if you know anything about me, you know how much of a Garfield guy I am. It's kind of part of my identity. When it came to turning Garfield into live action, a couple of initiatives had to be achieved. Number one, how could you take a comic series and translate it onto the big screen? Not only a comic series, but a comic series about a fat cat that would usually only have 3 panels. Ooh, the punchline here is that he splatters his face into the lasagna and suffocates himself. Let's make this into an hour-and-a-half epic. Number 2 is how do you successfully translate all the other characters, including John Arbuckle and Odie, into their live-action counterparts. There's so many factors you have to do to make this good, and guess what? It wasn't. It was so bad that even Bill Murray, who plays Garfield in the live-action films, often states how much he regrets taking this role.
Do you have any regrets?
Garfield, maybe?
The entirety of the first Garfield is an utter embarrassment. They do everything within their power to try and fill an hour-and-a-half long runtime. That being said, despite my qualms with the movie, it is pretty faithful to the comic series. Garfield is lazy, he talks directly to the audience, he bullies Odie, John Arbuckle tries to get laid. It really is what you sign up for. Live-action Garfield. And that's really the thing about live-action transitions. It doesn't exactly have to be the best thing in the world. I mean, most people don't think it will exceed the original. It just has to be somewhat faithful. Now, the merits on whether or not it's good, I don't know. When it comes to Garfield, most people would agree there's nothing too spectacular or mind-blowing about it. And don't get me wrong, that hurts me to say, even despite my massive Garfield collection, but it's the truth. Now, you do have Garfield Tale of Two Kitties as a follow-up, and it's really more the same. Garfield's like really energetic for whatever reason. As a kid, I didn't really care for this movie as well. Really unimaginative in many ways. I'd say it even lacks even less life than the first movie. And when I was a child, this just really made me just want to read the comics more or even watch the TV show. You see, Garfield's animated adventures are actually full of substance. I'd say it was a good translation from the comics to an animated series. But translating Garfield from an animated series into a live-action adaptation, okay, then it starts to get boring and you start to really extend the limits of what the series could be, which isn't really much. That being said, I am excited for the Chris Pratt Garfield rendition coming out in the foreseeable future. For one, it's fully animated, and for another, it's kind of morbid curiosity. Garfield's live-action movies are whatever, but how about something that's actually good? Enter the One Piece reboot. Now, I'm no major fan of One Piece, I've really only seen a handful of episodes, and have read a decent chunk of the manga, but from what I have read and seen, it's a fun adventure series. My brother recommended I watch the One Piece live-action series, as it's a fun and easily accessible way to watch the show without having to go through 1,000 episodes or so. So I watched the first few episodes of the One Piece live-action series, and wow, it wasn't absolute dog shit. In fact, it was pretty charismatic. You know, when you think of animation to live action, you can't help but think about, oh, how are they going to translate this very animated series, including the characters, the sets, even the general stories, and put their own spin on it when it comes to making it in real life. At times, the translation becomes as forced, unnatural, and worst of all, just simply embarrassing. Now, you don't want something that's one-to-one, but you also want something that's different, that actually has a purpose for existing. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think a live-action counterpart that does this well was the Scooby-Doo movie. Don't worry, we'll get to One Piece in a second. The Scooby-Doo movie does not take itself too seriously, and I think that's what makes it great. I believe casting when it comes to live action is one of the most critical aspects. Now, the Scooby-Doo live-action film was supposed to be rated R originally, and thank God they didn't do that, because all the adult themes surrounding the movie are generally heavily implied, which just makes it funnier.
I'm Mary Jane.
Like, that is my favorite name.
Really?
Yeah.
No way.
Shaggy catches the cartoon vibe of his character so well, while trying not to make things too theatrical. You can tell Matthew Lillard, the guy who played Shaggy, had a lot of fun in this role, bringing this character to life.
We're gonna die!
Think positive.
We're gonna die quickly!
You have Fred, who's big and dumb, who has some of the best lines in the entire movie.
Hey, you're doing that thing again where you take everything I say out of context. You're trying to make it look like I think Coolsville sucks. No, don't record that.
All Fred Jones had to say was,
I think Coolsville sucks.
"In light of
Velma's also really good. In fact, one of her best scenes is a deleted scene in where she sings Can't Take My Eyes Off of You. Why they deleted this, I don't know.
She does know that Bloody Skull's a non-alcoholic, doesn't she?
The Scooby-Doo movies are really national treasures. Probably because the guys who wrote these movies was James Gunn. You know, the guy who made Guardians of the Galaxy 1 through 3. If you love these characters enough, you can make something that's fairly genuine and doesn't seem like some Hollywood schlock that they made to get a quick buck. I can't say the same thing when I watch Dragon Ball Evolution, one of the biggest mistakes of the Dragon Ball Z franchise. So here's the thing, I think you can make some good live action products just as long as you have a good writer who loves whatever they're writing about. Hell, it would even probably help if you even knew what you were writing about. This was not the case for Dragon Ball Evolution because the director, quote, knew nothing about the series when he signed on. So when you watch Dragon Ball Evolution, you might notice that it tries to be as badass as possible while also being a high school teen drama. The movie is cheesy, not even in a way where you can really make fun of it, because the entirety of it is just really boring. The differences in this movie are pretty clear compared to the anime. Instead of something called the Kamehameha, they end up calling it airbending, for no reason whatsoever. Oh, and if you're here for the characters, you're really not gonna get much because the acting here is super bad. You can tell everyone's really doing this for a paycheck. Oh, and the action scenes, they're incredibly underwhelming. One of my favorite parts of the movie that is actually pretty funny, of course not purposely, is when Goku masters the Kamehameha at the end to defeat Piccolo. And dude, it's so weak, it's like really embarrassing. He pushes himself towards Piccolo, and the flying over looks so bad. It really is amazing, actually. This is one of the worst translations from anime to live action that I have ever seen, if not the worst. Apparently the creator of Dragon Ball, Akira Toriyama, was initially pretty supportive of the announcement of a live action Dragon Ball film, and asked fans to treat the movie as a different interpretation of his work. But then after he watched the movie, he got pretty upset, so upset that he decided to revive the show by creating an animated movie called Dragon Ball Z Battle of the Gods. It would later be revealed that he wasn't even allowed to have any creative input on the movie, with all his suggestions being rejected. This happens way more often than you think. Usually the studio and the creator of the source material have an agreement to create a live-action version of the series at hand, and usually those agreements leave the creator out in the dust, leading to an overall disaster of a live-action film. You know, at times you might even have someone who loves the source material but has no idea how to translate it onto the big screen. Such as the case with M. Night Shyamalan's Avatar: The Last Airbender. Oh my god, I saw this in theaters, in 3D of all things, and it was incredibly underwhelming for my 10-year-old mind. This shit sucks, dude. It has a 5% on Rotten Tomatoes, but I think it should be like a 1%. With horrible acting and joyless direction, the plot makes no sense. In the TV show, there's so much time to develop the characters. We learn about Aang, Katara, Zuko, their goals and ambitions, while in the live action movie it just keeps throwing things at you over and over again. You're just left wondering what is going on. This is the product of a director who takes the personality of what made the show great and strips it for all of its soul into something completely incoherent. It is one of the most awkward live action remakes I have ever seen.
Leave him alone!
You could even look at archive footage of when the movie came out, of what fans thought right after they finished seeing the movie.
We're here with some of the younger first fans for The Last Airbender, and we'll start with the youngest. What'd you think?
It sucked.
It sucked.
It's terrible.
It's horrible.
I really didn't like it.
I don't actually think M. Night Shyamalan has ever even seen this show.
I want my money back.
Wow.
And I actually wish I had my hair back, too.
I should have gone and seen Twilight.
You know, I can go on and on about the live action stuff. For example, I could talk about the Super Mario Bros. Movie, which I actually do kind of like. Not to be confused with the 2023 version, but the 1993 version. It's just so weird, it's very fascinating to me. The way even a Goomba looks, how it has humanistic qualities, but it's still like a huge monster. It's just scary. It really scared me as a kid. And even now, it's still really jarring to look at. It was kind of like destined to fail, especially after Harold Ramis, you know, the guy who directed Ghostbusters and Groundhog Day, passed on even the idea of directing the film. It was even set for even more failure when they passed on Tom Hanks from playing the role of Luigi. I like it more as a time capsule of what a Nintendo movie was in 1993. The next time Nintendo would release another film, besides a Pokemon anime film, would be in 2019 with Detective Pikachu. That being said, the Super Mario Bros. Movie does have the song Walk the Dinosaur in it, and to this day, that song still gives me life. It's just kind of weird, like some things are accurate, some things are inaccurate. I mean, the bomb in the movie looks fairly accurate, but it looks fairly bizarre in a live action setting. As a side note, this movie does have the biggest "this hasn't aged well" scene in film history. I mean, I don't have to say anything else, just watch this clip. It really is an anomaly of a movie. That's really all I could really say about it. Mostly because Mario and Luigi begin to fire up, giving us one of the greatest images of all time. I mean, look how badass the brothers look here. It's way more epic than anything Dragon Ball Evolution would ever give us. They literally take the Super Mario Bros. In real life concept and make it real. Yoshi is an actual dinosaur here. It's a raptor, but it's still somehow cute in a weird type of way. As it relates to One Piece, Netflix has tried before to turn an anime into a movie. A really bad movie at that. So when you translate a full series into a movie, you're greeted with a very rushed product. As we saw with Avatar, Death Note is no different. Bro, they don't even care, they just start rolling with it. There's no tension or anything, it's just like, oh, okay, here we go. Within the first 10 minutes, Light gets the Death Note book and meets up with Ryuk. For a movie that's an hour and 45 minutes, they gotta do everything that they can in order to put as much plot as possible. This leaves little to no time to breathe, little to no time to develop our characters, little to no time to even comprehend what's going on. With no fleshing out of the characters, everyone is kind of just like despicable, with no real positive qualities to them, so there's not really any stakes here on whether or not you care if a character dies or not. The movie gives explanations for things that don't need explanations. For example, L in the anime likes eating sweets because it adds a distinct personality trait to him. Here they decide to give one because, I don't know, I actually don't know why. Here it helps him solve the crime because, I don't know, it somehow helps him expand his brain and see it grow like a third eye.
The insulin spike from the candies will focus your mind for final consideration. When it fades, you asleep for 1 hour.
We have Kira's girlfriend, who has much more of a presence here in the movie than in the show, even having way more screen time than Ryuk. You know, one of the most iconic characters, if not the most iconic character from Death Note. And in here, her motives don't make any sense. She just wants to kill everyone because, I don't know. Again, I just don't know. There's a big chase scene at the end of the movie in where L literally destroys Seattle, trying to chase after Light. It's actually kind of funny because at this point, who really cares anymore? It's so bad, it's laughable. It's actually a good time to watch. A thing I do love about this movie that I think is so weird is that it acts like a late 90s to early 2000s Pixar movie. Like the end credits are just blooper scenes. For whatever reason, they decide to leave the blooper scenes in as if they know themselves that this movie is a joke. This movie has some balls and I kind of respect it. But here's the thing about Death Note. The acting for it is actually pretty okay. William Dafoe's like the best part about it. So what happens when you actually combine a cast that actually cares about the show, a director/writer who knows a good amount about the original series, in fact even respects it? What happens when you make something, you know, good? Well, you get One Piece. Now let me get this straight, One Piece live action isn't the greatest thing in the world, but when it comes to live action, it doesn't have to be. Dude, at the end of the day, it just has to be fun. It also shows that it has soul, unlike a lot of these live action remakes. The dialogue doesn't sound forced, the actors are clearly having a good time, and not only that, there was actual input from the original creator of One Piece the manga and anime. Surprisingly, Netflix agreed with the creator Oda that the show would not come out until he was satisfied reading the scripts. He would give notes and acted as a guard dog to ensure that the material was being adapted in a correct way. There is a lot of heart to this adaptation, entertaining longtime fans, and me, who's really more of a newcomer, I think it's pretty cool as well. To my brother, who's a huge fan of One Piece, it brings out his inner child, and it only leaves me to imagine that it's able to captivate so many other longtime viewers as well. There are still flaws with the live adaptation, like with many live adaptations. Some people complain that the show moves too fast to try and to put in as much plot as possible in such a short amount of time, since they really do have a lot of ground to cover. I mean, the anime has 1,000 episodes, so if you're trying to catch up, well, it's gonna take you quite a while. It's also a bit of a gamble to take the visuals from the anime and translate it into live adaptation, and I think for the most part they do it well. However, at times it can look a little awkward. However, when it comes to the visuals, things don't look bland and generic, but really more lively and has a lot of personality to it all. I think the reason why this turned out as great as it did is because the creator of One Piece, Matt Owens, had a goal of getting Oda's vision decision absolutely correct. And that's the thing here. Unlike Dragon Ball Evolution, there's actual respect to the original creator of the manga. The creator wasn't shut out of the talks when it came to making the show. In fact, they were celebrated during the talks. Cause that's the only way to really make a live adaptation good. You have to not only have respect for the source material, but for the creator themselves. I'll also get something shitty like Dragon Ball Evolution. Like this video, subscribe, I love you guys, bye.